All right, hello, this is Pat Lynch, and this is the Career Pathways Podcast. Normally, you'd find us in the luxurious basement of the library at Lyon College in the KILT radio studio. But for this podcast, and it's a special one, we are at Dream and Stream Studios in North Little Rock. Say hello, Kelly.
Hello.
There you go. I highly recommend if you want a professional podcast produced, he's the guy to go check it out. So we have a podcast today with Victoria Capek, TV news journalist, just social media expert, and an all-around fascinating person. So we think you're going to really enjoy the show. Thanks a lot. Hello, this is Pat Lynch, and you're listening to the Career Pathways Podcast. As always, I'm joined by my crack podcasting team.
Gavin, Brunson.
And I'm Jayson, Nichols, the producer.
Jayson, the producer, as we lovingly call him. And today we have Victoria Capek joining us. Victoria is based here in Little Rock, has had an interesting career as a TV TV reporter, TV host, TV
kind of
newscaster.
All of the above. TV guru, I guess.
TV guru, even better. So with that, we'll just get started. Well, welcome, Victoria.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, Pat.
Oh, man. And now, we always start out to just kind of tell us something about yourself, kind of like where you're from, kind of, how you got from like college to where you are today.
Yeah, my elevator pathway, or career pathway, if you will, is I'm from Lawrenceville, Georgia, so that's right outside of Atlanta, or kind of northeastern suburbs of it. I say right outside because no one likes to know that you're 35 minutes outside of Atlanta in a really small suburb, because that's, who cares? But anyways, I went to North Georgia Military College down there, and I did my undergrad degree in communications, concentrating in multimedia journalism. Soon after undergrad, I got a pretty fast job actually in my field, which is kind of unbelievable these days. I feel like that doesn't really happen, as a TV reporter in Duluth, Minnesota. So I made a huge jump from Georgia to northern Minnesota, which was the most climatic shock I could have asked for. 2 winters there was extremely expensive, and it really helped me build up that grit, learning how to drive in the snow for the first time as a Georgian. I worked there in TV news at Fox 21 for about a year and a half, made my way down to Arkansas. You said I'm based in Little Rock, which is where I'm still at now. And I started working at KTV News, another local station based in Little Rock. And I went from general assignment reporter to host of Good Morning Arkansas in about 3 months. A lot of that was pandemic based because there was a lot of switching happening during the early years of the pandemic in 2020. And so I was hosting Good Morning Arkansas. I was the live morning reporter. So I spent 2 years waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't recommend it. I finished up that kind of era of my life in early 22. I decided to leave news and travel for a while. I backpacked through Europe for a couple of months, and then I went out to Los Angeles to pursue a master's in arts and culture writing. So I stayed in the path of journalism, but I focused more on print writing. I did that. I finished and got my master's degree in 10 months, and I moved back to Arkansas, where now I'm doing a lot of independent contracting and journalism or storytelling on a smaller scale, where I am doing social media, digital marketing, and events, and I guess kind of communications as a whole, if you will.
So coming out of Georgia and coming from that type of place, getting right into your field like soon after graduating, how was that for you? Was that like a surreal experience for you?
It was really interesting because you say right after, and now looking back at the time, it took about 5-6 weeks for me to get that first job, and I'm realizing now looking back how soon that really was. But in that 5-6 weeks that I didn't have a job immediately after graduating, I was like, oh my God, I am crap. Like, no one is hiring me right now. This is not good. I was really having a meltdown. But as soon as I got that job, it all happened so quickly. You know, they made an offer, and 2 weeks later, I was already moved up to Minnesota. And yeah, it was really surreal, mostly because it was that first transition into big girl world, you know? And school can prepare you for a lot, but it can only prepare you for so much. That real experiences really are the only way that you're going to be able to grow in certain aspects. And yeah, it took off really quickly from there.
Would you say that Minnesotans are more nice than people in Georgia?
Now, full disclosure, producer Jayson is from
Minnesota.
Okay, so you're fishing a little bit there, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, Minnesota nice is definitely a thing. Would I say they're nicer? I don't know, because, you
there
have
are some
southern
rude people there.
when it's that cold, how can you not be a little angry sometimes? But people were generally very nice. Nothing beats southern hospitality, though, I have to say.
Do you like the when you were in Duluth? Was it kind of surreal to see the lake the way it was, where you're like, oh my gosh, it's like an ocean?
That's exactly how it was. I had an apartment that actually was about 3 blocks away from Lake Superior, and I remember looking out of my window and just thinking, I am actually looking at the edge of the earth right now. Like, it was crazy. And then seeing the whole thing freeze over. There was at one point, one of my stories actually was covering a festival that was happening on the lake during the winter, like deep winter. And so it's frozen over so much that we were able to walk about half a mile onto the lake to go cover this story. And I was like, this is kind of terrifying and also equally very cool right now.
But when you were there and your first reporting, now walk us through like kind of what that really is like. Like, do you have to come up with your own story idea? Then do you got to do you film it yourself, or you were basically like a one-person show in many ways, yes?
Yeah, that's exactly how it is. So they call it like a one-man band, or what I was technically hired as is an MMJ, which is a multimedia journalist. And a lot of people don't know that, especially in smaller markets, the reporters are doing a lot of stuff on their own. They expect every reporter to have a photographer come with them, doing their hair and makeup and all this. But, when I say it was a rude awakening and how fast it really happened is you move there, and then literally day 2, they're like, okay, what are your stories? What are your sources? And I'm like, guys, I've lived here for 72 hours. What do you mean right now? Right. But yeah, you would go out into the community, and it's really important for young journalists to not just report on the community, but be a part of it so that you can know what stories you have to tell. So you go there, you find your stories, you come in, you pitch them, you learn how to use all of the filming gear. You have to go set it up yourself. You're recording everything yourself. You take it back to the studio, you write your story, you edit your story, you record your story, you record the video for your story, and then you have to present it live. And you have to do all of that within about 5 to 6 hours.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, I learned a lot, and it was very hard, but I seriously think I'm going to owe everything for the rest of my life on just my few years I spent working in local news, because you really learn how to be a machine.
Yeah. What was your first big story? That it was like, because I'm sure they gave you a bunch of human interest, kind of stuff in the beginning, and then there's like that moment where you had something like, wow.
Yeah. I don't know if you would call this like a crazy, big, hard-hitting story, but it was the first one that I remember being like, I really want this story. I think that's super cool. And about an hour and a half from my station in Duluth, Minnesota, was the Judy Garland Museum. And it was back in 2018, that's when I started that first job, that the ruby red slippers, I just heard you whisper it, the ruby red slippers were actually recovered.
Oh, yeah, they were recovered.
Right.
They were recovered.
Didn't they recover it?
But they like recovered it from
like the river,
lake
right?
or something like that. But the Judy Garland Museum is where they were stolen from. And when we're referring to the ruby red slippers, we're talking about the Wizard of Oz. Judy Garland actually got to wear this pair of ruby red slippers in her role of Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz. And so years ago, those slippers were stolen from that Judy Garland Museum. And when we found out they were recovered, I was like, I want to go to the museum. I want to do that. And I remember that being very hard because it being so far away, I didn't exactly have, I lost about 3 hours of time having to drive out there and drive back. So because of that, I had to on the drive back, I was basically writing the story in my head. I remember having one hand on the steering wheel, a notepad in my lap, and trying to write at the same time as driving. I do not recommend this. Kids, do not try this at home. But yeah, I was doing that, just trying to make sure I would get it in on time. Right. And I remember the video, my final edited video, didn't go through until the opening credits of our newscast was happening. That's how close to the wire I was cutting it. And that was one of the first really big stories that I remember doing. And looking back, I think I would cringe so hard if I went and watched what I actually recorded, but I'm really proud of it, and that one sticks out to me a lot.
Oh, awesome. And then, you're there in Duluth for like a year and a half, and then what prompted the change to change stations and come to Little Rock?
Absolutely. So I actually was wanting to go to grad school already, if I could be a lifelong student, actually a lifelong student, not just the expression people say. I would be. I love being in school. I hope to go get my PhD one day, but I was already looking at grad school options because I knew I wanted to pursue something that was a more nuanced focus in theater and journalism. And so I was looking at this arts journalism program that was at USC in Los Angeles. And so I had already created a reporter reel. I put that out there all for school. But because I had put that reel out there, I had stations around the country and news directors around the country finding it and reaching out to me saying hey, I see you're interested in trying to go somewhere else. Would you want to potentially talk to us about coming and working at our station? And I'm always someone who wants to follow an opportunity. I don't want to cut anything off because you just never know what it could lead to. And so we had someone from KATV here in Little Rock reach out to me, and I was like, wow, that would be a really big jump in markets. So one thing people might not know is news markets are based on something called a DMA ranking, exactly. Yeah. And it's out of 210 markets. So for example, New York City is going to be number 1 because it's the biggest one. You're going to reach the most people. Duluth, Minnesota, where I was about 146. Little Rock is about 52. So that was a almost 100 market jump. And I knew that would have been fantastic for my career. So I heard them out. They flew me out for an interview. And I was like, you know what? School can wait. Thank goodness I did wait because the pandemic happened a few months later. And I don't think being in school during that, sorry guys, would be a very fun situation. So that's kind of what prompted the change, is I knew it would lead to more opportunities. And I grew more during my time in Arkansas, personally, professionally, and in every way possible than I could have ever imagined. And it was the best jump I could have made.
Wow. And so then you're here at KATV. How was that job different than the one you had in Duluth?
Absolutely. So KATV, for different reasons. So there were more resources at this station, with it being a little bit bigger. Instead of doing the MMJ thing, there were actually reporters and photographers that got to be partnered together. Remember, I told you very quickly I went from general assignment reporter to being a host and a morning reporter, which made it a little different for me. I didn't go out and do turn stories where I had to get them done in about 4 or 5 hours. I would wake up at 2 a.m. I would write my stories at 3 a.m. very, very early, which would be usually breaking news or something that could be covered live. I would drive out there, and from 5 to 7, I would do live news hits wherever I was and for whatever story I was covering. I would come back. I would do a little bit of traffic reporting, and then I would get ready to host my show, Good Morning Arkansas, at 9 a.m. So it was a very different setup than what I had, and both of them having different responsibilities. I wouldn't say one was holding more responsibilities than the other, but definitely a lot less sleep once I came to Arkansas, which...
Different sleep cycle.
Yes, very different.
So I remember watching one of your YouTube videos.
Oh.
That a day in the life, right?
Yes,
just
fun.
And it's not all, everybody just sees somebody on screen, but they don't, when you start and everything that requires to get there. And one thing is you were a real, I'll call it like an early adopter as far as like TikTok and social media. And
Yes.
that is real distinctive, or as far as in a market like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved doing behind the scenes content on TikTok, and I think that's a part of the reason I actually gained a following. So right now I have a little over 219,000 followers, and most of those were gained during my news era, so to speak, because people liked seeing the raw behind the scenes, unpolished footage that you didn't get when you would just look at a TV newscast. And people were really just kind of interested in seeing the human side of things. And that's what I really wanted to remind people, is that you see what looks like this very professional, polished person on air, but in reality, when I started anchoring at KATV here in Little Rock, I was 24 years old, which is honestly kind of crazy. I do not know why they would put someone so young in charge of big things. But I wanted to remind people that, like, I was still a 24-year-old and I was doing this big professional thing, but I was still wanting to hang out with my friends and doing things that 24-year-olds do, which is figuring out what the heck their career is going to be and what their life is going to look like. And people on TikTok really liked that honesty and really got to learn a lot about this industry that I feel like they felt very separated from for a long time.
But did the station like the TikTok honesty?
Well, now you're asking the questions that are definitely more interesting.
Let's do it.
I actually love talking about this because now that I am so separated from news, it feels better. The short answer is no, the station did not like it.
Right.
In 2020, again, pandemic time, TikTok was still pretty new. I think that there are a lot of people that didn't understand exactly what TikTok was. There was a lot of discourse about it being possibly a threatening website, it possibly being owned by Chinese spies and everyone spying on us and what have you. And it was known for being the dancing app that young kids were on. And so why the heck is this 24-year-old supposedly professional on this app? What is she doing? What is she exposing? She shouldn't be exposing. And it ruffled feathers in my station in a way that they just didn't like it. And I, in addition to exposing a lot of the behind the scenes aspects of news, was very open about a lot of things that I think were happening in the industry that deserve to be highlighted, such as why are there less women in the industry? Why are women so ridiculed in the industry? Why are there less people of color in on-air positions? Why aren't there as many queer people being highlighted in these positions? Myself being queer and openly talking about that a lot. And I won't say inherently that my station didn't like me talking about those things. I will say that being in Arkansas and it being a more conservative market, there were audience members that didn't necessarily like it. And news, if anything, is run off of and is successful off of how many views it's getting. Right. So the unfortunate thing is that I was not necessarily appealing by showing behind the scenes aspects on my TikTok to the conservative audience that I think might have been paying the bills at my station.
Yeah, so your authentic self is here, and you have this audience outside, but then you have the station that wants you to be something else.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's because full disclosure that Victoria is also kind of a theater kid in some.
Totally a theater kid, which
and I know
yeah.
because she shared an apartment with my daughter Robin. Hello, Robin.
Hi, Robin.
Yeah, so we got to put that in there. But I remember Robin telling me even like visible tattoos. They were kind of saying hide it, and it's like really okay.
Yeah, that actually caused a whole war. Funnily enough, this is the second time I'm talking about the tattoo story this week because NBC actually reached out to me earlier this week to do a story on it, and I was like, guys, this happened 3 years ago. What is happening?
Right.
No, the short story to that is I got a beautiful floral tattoo by local artist Andy Vasquez on my shoulder. And I wanted to show it off on air because why? It's a beautiful piece of artwork. And I had encouragement from some of my higher ups in the industry who said, we don't think it's a problem. I showed it on air. It was apparently a problem. It pissed off about 3 people, and my news director and my bosses at KATV basically said you have to cover it up. I made a little TikTok video about it, and I apparently started a war because I had a bunch of young people calling in saying, let Victoria wear her tattoo on air. She's representing us in a way we've never seen someone do before. And I got suspended for a couple of days. I mean, like, it's
with
fine.
Pay?
Not with pay,
Oh,
but
no.
it's like,
Darn it,
whatever.
that
I
would've been the
got
best
2
way.
extra days off to, like, sleep and go drink margaritas. I was not that upset, guys. But at the time, I also had never been known to be a rule breaker. I was freaking out. I was literally like, what is going to happen with my career? And kind of these weird incidents like that sort of kept happening where I seem to have been ruffling feathers. And I feel like I almost took it upon myself in the rest of my time at KATV to be this boat rocker, so to speak, where I was trying to show people like, hey, you don't have to fit this like standard that TV news has been doing for decades. You can be something else and still be very successful in this job. And in fact, you'll probably reach people whose voices aren't being represented properly a lot more than the people who aren't ruffling feathers.
Where do you think the change needs to happen? So, like, for example, the industry standard, the way it is now, like, where do you think, like, the change would need to start for it to be more, like, welcome for people to show, like, tattoos or people to be queer on TV?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think starting in schools is a really important thing. So what's really interesting is I mentioned I had just gotten my master's at USC in Los Angeles, and I went for a very nuanced form of journalism, arts and culture writing. So that's a lot of critiques, reviews. It's very opinion-based a lot of the time. It's not your editorial journalism that you see in TV news or like local newspapers. But however, there were programs that were at USC that were based on your traditional broadcast journalism. And something that I honestly hated was seeing that these professors were teaching the same way that my professors were in undergrad 6 years ago. I know 6 years isn't a super long time, but in that period of time, things and apps like TikTok have developed, and the news landscape and the way that people consume this industry has changed significantly. So why are we teaching about Walter Cronkite in 2023? Why are we teaching the same way we were teaching about journalism in 1975?
Edward Murrow guy, you know.
Yeah, Edward Murrow, you know, and it's not to say that there aren't things that we need to keep, but I think it starts in our schools because students are getting this window of the industry from these professors that they look up to who are still sipping the same journalism tea that I like to say that I think are outdated. And I think professors maybe need to go back into the world and maybe see how things are being done now, not just by the industry, but by outside industries, and bringing that into teaching students at the base level before they go out into their careers and spread it even further.
Yeah, because I know news. It's just now, everybody who has a phone is can capture news in many ways.
Oh yeah.
And I like some of my favorite reads now are things like Puck News, Semaphore. All these things that Substack and following blogs, and I'm getting a lot of high quality content that way. Now I read like the Times and things, but
of course,
but it's it's not that it's this narrow. It's like the old Cronkite. 3 stations, and that was that, and a couple major newspapers, and that was it.
Independent journalism, I think, is what is really sweeping over 2023 and soon to be 2024. I'm not saying that needs to be your end-all, be-all, but I'm just saying there are a lot of independent journalists. My personal favorite is Under the Desk News, who is on TikTok. I think that they do a fantastic job of just truly giving stories as they are. They're not affiliated with any station, but they get on TikTok and they report the news of what's happening in the world every single day. And I just think that's something that a lot of young people are going to be interested in following moving on.
Because we kind of saw that. Well, we saw that like in the early days of YouTube, like where I know like people like Philip DeFranco, they would do like news like that, but nobody ever took them seriously. Like, how do you think people need to like what needs to be adjusted for people to start taking like TikTok news seriously? Because when you think of TikTok, you're like, oh, that's the app that kids use. Like, how do we change that association with it?
I think it's a way deeper problem than what's just going on with news. I'm very much like the most anti-ageist you could possibly be. I'm like, I think that we should put 7-year-olds in charge of corporations, truly. Because, okay, maybe not to that extreme, but like, you guys get the idea. Something I will preach until the end of time is that kids, and I don't just mean 4-year-olds, I mean like 16-year-olds who are very much smart and have an incredible brain and incredible abilities, but they're considered kids because, well, they are kids because they're not 18. Kids don't just deserve a seat at the table, they deserve a voice. And I think a part of the bias with apps like TikTok and consuming things off of TikTok is still that it's a child's app, right? That it's a social media app. It can't be taken seriously, but not to sound like every person ever, but just like Facebook and every social media app that was developed early on, I just don't think it's picking up. I don't think it's picked up steam from larger groups or credibility yet, because it's just still, like Facebook early on, Instagram early on, people didn't trust it. They didn't know what it was. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is that I just think it needs to be understood by older crowds first, because for whatever reason we don't trust kids.
And TikTok is going to be harder too, because A, it's not owned by an American company, and B, also there's already been so much fire under it in the United States government. Like, do you think there will ever be a time that we could ever, like, people rely so much, especially the older generation, on what they see on the news. So when they see TikTok getting dragged through the mud, it makes them never want to touch it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, we say TikTok because that's the one in the zeitgeist right now. Like, that's the one that we're using and seeing. But insert social media app here. I do think that digital journalism and social media, quote unquote, journalism is going to be the next wave of journalism, in the same way that TV replaced print. And there are still aspects of it, and there will still be aspects of like print journalism, radio, TV, what have you. But digital and social media journalism is going to be the next thing, whether that's TikTok or whatever gets developed specifically for it.
So do you not think that like TikTok or like you said, insert social media has not already gotten to that point? Because you can see like older communities are starting to look at TikTok now. Like, for example, my dad watches TikTok more than me.
Yeah.
And so he gets most of his information from TikTok, from Instagram. So do you not think it's hit that pivotal point yet, or is it still a process to get there?
I don't know. I think it has been around long enough now that it has probably picked up what it's going to pick up. I think it's about that time that something else is probably going to be developed very soon. I don't think TikTok's going to go away, but I think that there's going to be something that comes up for it. I mean, you see more and more video developments happening through like Meta and Instagram Reels. Even Snapchat started like adapting similar situations and stuff like that. And so I think, I don't know if TikTok is going to be the one to do it. It continues to grow. I can't say I'm a TikTok expert. I'll keep going to it, but that's all I can say for that.
Where you are today, kind of what's your future plans? What is it that you want to do?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I do not dream of labor. No, I'm kidding. In the past almost 2 years since I left news, I mentioned briefly I backpacked through Europe for a little bit of time. I had my Eat, Pray, Love scenario. I went to school. I've fallen in love. I am living with my partner now. And since I've come back to Arkansas, I've kind of made this entrepreneurial career for myself, doing social media for local businesses, digital marketing, organizing events. Like I just rushed over here from a monthly market that I organize. It's like an artist farmers market.
Petaway?
Yeah, the one at Petaway.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So every first Saturday of the month, I run a market over there for local vendors. Super cute and wholesome. And I have really enjoyed doing that. I've really found this ability to do storytelling on a more micro level through that in a way that I actually felt very limited from being able to do in journalism, especially working in local news. There were a lot of limitations working in local news where I think because stations are run by corporations, there's still an agenda for them, so to speak. As much as you want to be unbiased, it's kind of hard to not be. And I think it kind of stepped away from what journalism was originally supposed to be, which is being a voice for the people. You end up being more of a megaphone for government institutions a lot of the time. And I've found in this independent social media work, I've actually been able to be a voice for underrepresented groups, which would be queer communities, communities of color, women, poorer communities that take up a large population here in Arkansas and in Little Rock and really deserve to be highlighted in a way that they just haven't been. So that's kind of what I continue seeing myself pursuing.
Well, when I hear that, Victoria, what I hear is a future activist. Is that a good way of, because you have that and okay, I'm going to give a voice to those that don't have one. I'm going to, just make, help them, whether it's media or any of your other skills. Am I in the zip code?
I wouldn't say no to calling me an activist. I wouldn't say that it would be the first thing I would call myself.
Okay.
I don't know if what I'm doing these days, if you would still consider me a journalist. Like I said, I just went and did my studies in culture writing, which I think more aligns in what I'm kind of aiming for, is just telling the stories of the groups who need it most. And technically, yes, that is an activist in this day and age. And if that's what people want to call me, I am honored to even be considered a part of that realm. I don't know if that's what I'm aiming for necessarily.
Oh, no. With telling that story, how do you do that? Through their social media accounts, or do you use Medium or Substack, or what? What is your? I'm sure it's multimedia.
Yeah.
What's the approach?
I'm definitely doing a lot less long form writing than I was when I was doing local news or journalism studies. But my favorite thing to do is like run a small campaign, or like I said, these little one-off events I'm doing. So, for example, I don't know who here would be familiar with Ayanna Gray. She is an author that is from Little Rock who is the author of the Beast of Prey trilogy, and she's a New York Times bestselling author. And she currently has a partnership with Netflix. Her books are being made into a movie. I met her back in 2021, and she's been one of my good friends since then. But she's very passionate about speaking on book bans and fighting against book bans and speaking up for education and why young people need to fight back against books that are being banned in educational settings. And I actually connected her with Paper Hearts Bookstore, which is a small local bookstore in the Petaway Square area here in Little Rock, who really wants to be a voice for these underrepresented groups. It's very important for them. And so I connected them in an event called I Read Banned Books, where Ayanna came and spoke. And at the time of the event in early August, we had, I would say, up to 100 people attend that event. And that was the biggest event in Petaway Square. It seems really small, but for that area, you've been there. We had about 100 people come attend that event to hear Ayanna speak about the importance of fighting against this during a time where, bookstore owners and educators and librarians are all being demonized for certain books being on their shelves and what have you. So that's kind of the way I'm doing storytelling this day is being a relationship builder and a connector, and less through my words and more through my actions. Maybe I am an activist, actually, now that I'm saying that. So,
but at Lyon College, a couple of our students at our library created an exhibit of banned books.
Wonderful.
Proud to proud to do that. And in April we have Garrett Conley, who's a Lyon alum that gained notoriety when he wrote the book Boy Interrupted, that became a movie.
Oh, wow.
And the whole thing around conversion therapy. And
wow.
And he's, it took me a while to connect with him, but we got him to. He's going to be speaking April 4th, and the whole thing is, just in this current climate.
Mm-hmm.
It was a voice like his, a voice like yours. Why it's so needed. So that. So I applaud you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, and it wasn't me. I am naturally good at talking and I guess connecting. And for the first time in my life, I'm actually seeing that as a skill and an ability, and using that to connect people who have a platform and a voice is super cool and really important to me at this time. And I'm really glad I could do it for something like that.
Wow. Well, you have to your left a communication major, and then producer Jayson here's an English major. So kind of writing, communications. What advice would you give to these young men as far as for careers?
Oh boy. As far as careers, I am going to say two things. The first one is actually, I can't remember his name, which really, really stinks, but shout out to the guy who gave my keynote speech at my master's ceremony graduation at USC. I want to say his name is David, which is just a generic guy's name. He is
guy who said that thing.
The guy who said that thing. He's a chef, and he actually went to school. He told a story about how he went to school for like religion, and now he's a chef. And his main piece of advice was, you are probably not going to do the thing that you set out to do, and that is A-okay. Because it's not like you're not gaining wonderful, incredible things from these studies and from these early experiences that you might have. That is not to say don't follow the dream that you currently have. There's a reason you have that dream, and there's a reason why you're in the major you're in or the path you're in. But just know that if it changes, and it probably will, let it, because that's wonderful. And it kind of goes into my second piece of advice, which is follow the opportunities. There are things that are going to pop up in your life that feel super out of the blue, that feel like, why is this happening to me now? This is totally inconvenient for the path that I'm already on. But again, there are reasons that I think certain opportunities come up. And there are a lot of people that are afraid to take opportunities because they think it's going to shake things up. Well, yeah, that's the point. That's when opportunities come up, it's because they're going to shake things up. And you are definitely, and this is like the old man in me that's going to be like, you're going to regret the things you don't do. But like, seriously, you're going to regret the things you don't do. So just take the opportunities. I feel like they've led me to everywhere I've been so far. And I freaking love my life, man. Like I feel so proud of what I've been able to do. And I'm going to keep taking them, and I encourage you guys to do that as well.
So I don't know if you explicitly said why, but what made you choose communications as a degree? Like, what made you want to go that route?
Yeah, I actually first went into school as a criminal justice major. Heyo, weird. I went to a military college, and criminal justice was like the vibe, and I was going to do forensics, and I was going to be the head of the FBI or whatever. But I had a professor in one of my technical writing classes, which is a police writing class where you actually learn how to take like police reports down. And my professor was like, literally, what are you doing here? Like, this is too easy for you. You need to be doing something creative. I did theater all growing up, as Pat has mentioned. And I found a natural streamline from doing theater growing up, using my skill of writing that my professors pointed out, and I found journalism from that, actually. That's how I found communications, because I realized journalism specifically, and I think all communications fields, has an aspect of storytelling. Theater is storytelling, journalism is storytelling, comm is storytelling. The difference between the two is, like, in journalism and communications, you get to see your stories happening in real time. You get to see the impact happening in real time. And for me, it came very naturally, I guess, because of, again, that theater kid energy that just lives inside of me. I was able to get up in front of a camera and speak, and it made things really easy. But that was kind of where I found it.
Well, real good. Anything, Jayson?
The only other thing I would want to ask, it's kind of, we've kind of already beaten the bush a little bit, but every single time we have somebody who gets affected by this one particular thing that I love to talk about, which is AI. how do you think AI is affecting journalism, like for the like these small independent journalists? And I know like some big like New York Times has been experimenting with like writing stuff completely by AI. Do you think that journalism will completely shift to kind of just like this AI style, or do you think that human nature will always prevail through it?
I think that it's a great question that you're asking that. I personally love AI. I use ChatGPT every single day of my life. I am not ashamed to say that. I am not writing full things of anything with AI. I don't think anyone should be just like using AI as what it is and putting it out in the world. Hell no. I think it's here to help us. I mean, in the way that like internet was popping up in Y2K and everyone again was freaking out. Excuse me, I almost cussed. I don't know if I could do that on here. Was freaking out over it. We ended up realizing it was here for us and that it could help us. And I think that there are aspects of AI that are going to help make our lives more efficient, that is going to help us a lot in producing good work and doing things and accurately checking things that we wouldn't have the brain capacity to. And that sounds really bad. Like, I don't mean like people aren't smart and people aren't capable. It just saves us a lot of time. And that makes me sound like I'm some kind of like capitalist wanting to like turn out business left and right. I promise I'm not that. But I think that there are a lot of benefits for it helping, especially independent workers, on getting as much done as they possibly can. And when it comes to journalism specifically, I can definitely see why that would be spotty on the ethics kind of train. And I think good journalists will always be like quadruple checking their work, right? So this goes back to, you can use AI to help you draft certain things, but you should be editing. You should be following up with your research. You should be checking every single word that you have and making sure that it's accurate. And yeah, I kind of rambled about that one a little bit. I think about AI a lot as well. That was kind of what I was
looking for.
Yeah.
Because like you read some of these, if you've ever read any of the early test articles, they're hilarious to read, by the way. That's one of my favorite things to do. Like the early, like 2015 when AI was first coming out, it would be like, the rumor come out, does Bruno Mars is gay? And it's like, how does that, you know, like, and it's like rumor talking about his, and it's like, okay, yeah, there's words being said, but it's not legible at all. And that's kind of like what happens with AI, you know, it's like.
Yeah, and you kind of get this, like, there's like an AI voice where I think I just saw something on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, recently that was like, dude, did ChatGPT write this? And it was actually, someone actually wrote it, but it just sounded like that. Like, you know what it sounds like, and you can like hear it, and it's like, no one talks like that. No one writes like that.
Or like talking like they're from like the 1700s, because that was like the type of stuff that it would research.
Like, that's exactly, like, that's what it's able to pull up. Yeah, so I think like it's a great tool. Never take it as it is, but just like, I mean, like anything in life, you should be editing and doing your own work for it.
Yeah, we have a lot of debate at the college because faculty, right or wrong, they just see AI as a quicker, better way to plagiarize, and it's, you know, how to shift those attitudes more towards using it as a tool. And I had I got a student an internship, a micro internship, working for a company called HubSpot, and he did 2 projects on creating marketing content using AI, and it was how to, create like a template and a base, modify it, and then put it out as a campaign, and I remember when I had this opportunity, I go to some of the business faculty, they didn't want to go anywhere near anything with AI, which was, and I think that's the shift, at least at the college and university level, where it's like, how are you going to go and incorporate this as the positive tool that it can be?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like with anything in life, people get upset with or fear what they don't understand. Yep. So I think the best thing to always do is check it out for yourself and make your own opinions based off of the work that you've done with it. Don't just listen to all the hearsay everyone else is saying and doing.
All right, Victoria Capek, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where will we find you?
Oh my God, I hope overseas. Like,
All right.
I mean, obviously there's a lot of dependence on that. I would love to just gallivant through Europe one day. I feel like one of those pretentious people that's like, I went on one trip and it changed my life. But like, I went on one trip and it changed my life.
Fair enough.
I did that backpacking trip through Europe for about 2 months, and I went to 10 different countries, and it really, it was the most eye-opening and best experience I've ever had to this day. Better than getting my master's, better than any education or work experiences I've had. It was awesome. And my dream would be to be able to travel. I don't know if that means I'm working out there while I'm traveling. I don't know if that means living out there. I don't see that being a thing because I do have a partner here who values her family and of course her loved ones here. And so I would never take her from that. But I hope that whatever I'm doing, I have the flexibility to not only tell other people's stories, but go make my own. That's what's really important to me, is because I think it gives me a really great perspective, being able to live my own stories and live my own truth. And I think that's what's going to help me continue to tell other people's stories.
And being in arts and culture and knowing how to provide commentary on that.
Absolutely.
The worldwide travel would be fascinating.
Yeah, and there's a lot more to culture than just what we see in Arkansas and in America, as we know. And it's really important to just have those viewpoints and perspectives and learn through worldly ways rather than just the educational materials we have here with us.
Any possibility of seeing Victoria Capek in front of a camera again?
I think about it often. I miss aspects of working in news, and I would love the possibility of, I don't know, hosting my own show someday. Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of people who say that. I would love to do that, and I really would love to focus on telling the stories and speaking to these groups of people who I feel like I've mentioned before, especially the young people, because they are it. They are what's next. And that's all I could say to that. In the meantime, like, catch me making silly dancing videos on TikTok because I'm still doing that. And if anyone's listening to this and they're like, hey, I want to hire this girl, please do.
Well,
this is a career pathway show, not just for
but how
people,
if they wanted to reach you, can you tell everyone how to do that?
Of course, like old-fashioned email is cute. You could.
Is?
Victoria.Capek-Gray. Let me spell it. Viktoria CapekGrey@gmail.com. I'm so sorry, I have a very long name.
We'll put it on screen.
Please, thank you. And then social media, of course, if you want to hit me up through TikTok or Instagram, it's going to be at Victoria A. Capek. And my whole life is social media, unfortunately, so I am going to see something if you shoot me a message. But yeah, I'm always looking for those opportunities, and I would love the chance to just speak to anyone who has questions or curiosities about anything.
All right. Well, with that, we'll wrap it up. So thank you from Gavin, producer Jayson, as always. Victoria, thanks so much for being on the Career Pathways podcast, and we'll be talking with you next week with another fascinating guest. Thank you.
This broadcast is sponsored in part by Lyon College and by KILT Studios.